Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.
Fellow citizens, following the sequence of events, Uganda seems to be at political crossroads.
I'm not a servant of anybody.
Madam, I know the law.
As such, Alternative Digital brings you the Interface Show with retired Colonel Dr. Kakwenza Rukirabashaija.
Let's keep on the same page on Alternative Digitalk,
As he gives you the alternatives on the transition question, rule of law, human rights and freedom, youth inclusion in governance, economic stagnation, as he confirms.
I'll be always here Saturday from 10 a.m. in the morning. Be there.
Don't miss the live discussion on the Alternative Uganda, Digitalk TV Facebook pages, and the Alternative Uganda YouTube channel.
The Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.
A very good evening, our viewers. We thank you for joining us again this evening. It's yet another episode of the Hotline Show. It's the 13th day of February 2023. That means we've moved 23 days, within the new month of February. And very soon we'll be also entering the month of March. As we speak, very many people are eager to celebrate Valentine's, and well, that is for those who believe in Valentine's. And tomorrow, of course, everyone is eager to make it a special day. Well, today on the hotline, we need to discuss quite a number of things within looking at the human rights status of our country, Uganda. We all know that on the 3rd day of February 2023, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs wrote to the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights in Uganda, the UN office, notifying them that Office of the Human Rights Commission will not be operating in Uganda anymore starting August. This comes up after the signatures that were appended onto the documents that permit the operation of the Office of the High Commission of Human Rights Commission in Uganda. That agreement was signed it started actually in 2006, but the recent one was signed in 2020, February 9th, and that agreement is expiring in August of this very year. So the Minister of Foreign Affairs notified the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights that their operation will not be, their services will not be needed anymore in Uganda, citing that Uganda as a country, they have been able to develop their capacity when it comes to monitoring human rights complaints within the country. Of course, this has caused mixed reactions from political and human rights activists in the country, saying that this will be a green light being flashed onto the government to continue violating human rights of many Ugandans. And of course, we all know that a lot has happened when we speak about human rights in this country. And that will be our center of focus, center of discussion this evening. Well, my name is Abdalatif, and on the show I will be joined by two gentlemen. One is that renowned award-winning novelist, Kakwenza Rukirabashaija, is part of the show tonight. I also have Mr. Kato Tumusime. He is a lawyer. But before my guests chip in, I want you to just have a look at this video, and then we'll be able to proceed with the whole conversation tonight.
Easter Monday this year in April, I think it was 13th, I was in my bed sleeping, and suddenly my wife came running and told me that, you know what, we are under siege. The military have surrounded our home. So I got up like this, wrapped myself with a towel, and before I could even jump off the bed, the idiots had already entered the house, even had already entered the bedroom. So they pulled me out of bed. They commanded me to dress up. I dressed up, and they handcuffed me, they chained my legs, and they bundled me into their vehicle, and they drove me to CMI, the torture chamber, where I was tortured for almost 7 days. They told me I have issues with the State House. I did not know then which issues, and definitely I knew that they were arresting me because of my book, The Greedy Barbarian, though when I was writing it, I didn't know that I was invoking someone. I was poking the anus of the leopard. When I was taken to the torture chamber in Mbuya, in CMI, they interrogated me about it, about the book. They told me to describe the characters in the book. You can imagine, it is a work of imagination. I looked at them beating me up, telling me to describe the characters in the book. I was like, now how do I describe? How can I relate? How can I reconcile that this one is Museveni, this is Janet, this is Muhoozi, this is Second, this is who? It's just a work of imagination, just giving them headache. Because maybe what I wrote about is exactly what they are doing, you know. You know, when you talk about that, a pig gets annoyed. Picked me up, they did waterboarding, they hanged me, they hanged me in the toilet, they hanged me on the stairs, on the rails to the stairs. I almost died. They beat me up, all my body was swollen. I started urinating blood. By the time I got out of prison, I had inflammations in the brain, my kidneys were damaged, my eyes were damaged. These things of coming to pick me up from my bed when I'm naked and I'm taken to a torture chamber, maybe I can say that it has increased the sales of my books, because when I was arrested for the first time, anyway, my book was already a hot cake in Kampala. So when they arrested me, people bought off all my copies. I had to print 3 times. So the regime helped me to launch it. I see other people gathering people to, other authors gathering people to launch their work, but me, I've never gathered anyone to launch. It is Mr. Museveni and his hoodlums who helped me to launch my work. Even when I finished writing Banana Republic, before I could even publish it, they came to arrest me. So they helped me launch it. It got published. I've already sold off all the copies. I'm the first Ugandan to narrate my ordeal when my tormentors are still around. Because I am brave. I know that I'm brave. Because I come from Rukunjiri. What do you expect? People who come from Rukunjiri, we are very brave and defiant. So you cannot just torture me and I keep quiet. Of course, I have, when you torture a writer, he breathes ink. So you cannot just torture me and I keep quiet. No. I have to expose your impunity. I have to put it in papers so that people read and see how barbaric you are. So I exposed them. If you read this new book of mine, Banana Republic, I put all their impunity. If I tell my story, very many people will read and come to understand that the person who is presiding over a country called Uganda is the same person who said that he cannot preside over a country whereby a person is killed and he doesn't know who the killers are. A person is tortured, he doesn't know who the torturers are. But here I am, I've been tortured almost to death, and he thinks that I will keep quiet. Got out of prison, very many journalists had prepared reviews, and of course their editors refused to publish them. Orders from above. You have seen journalists being blacklisted, the government writing to media houses, instructing the bosses to fire them. So it is our responsibility as writers to reflect the time.
Well, that interview was done by Civic Space TV, and we thank them for being able to put that together. Well, you've heard that's Mr. Kakwenza Rukirabashaija. That was shortly after he was arrested. Well, I want to give my guests an opportunity to introduce themselves before we dive into the whole discussion. I want to start with my guest who is here in the studios. You're most welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you so much, Mr. T, for hosting me today. I'm Katutu Msibe, and I am happy to be here. I hope we shall follow and discuss so well tonight.
Thank you so much. I also want to invite Mr. Kakwenza Rukirabashaija to say hi to our viewers, and they get to know that he's really part of the show. You're most welcome, Mr. Kakwenza.
Thank you so very much. Glad to hear from you, though you have not introduced yourself. I've not heard your name.
Well, thank you so much. That's Mr. Kakwenza. Well, I want to start with Kakwenza. You've gone through a lot. And I believe when we talk about human rights status of this country, you could be sharing, having a very bigger portion of the story to share with us in that regard. Of course, in times when government is trying to do whatever it is in that all the atrocities as they are being committed, because they have to be unnoticed, just like we've been seeing these things happening, and now that they want to have a free space to do whatever they can do without anyone trying to put them into shape like, hey, you're doing this and you're going astray. And so does this mean that we are most likely to witness and see many Kakwenzas going through this?
I have not got an opportunity to know your name. I have only got the opportunity to know the name of your fellow.
Yes, Mr. Kakwenza?
I don't know why you're not telling me your name. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
I am asking that I did not hear your name. I don't know what is your name.
Oh, my name is Abdalatif.
Oh, Abdalatif. Great to hear from you. And I'm happy to be on the show, and greetings to your and
So it of technicalities, and as the team is trying to fix that, I want to go to Mr. Kato. You've had Mr. Kakwenza sharing his audio, and as a lawyer, you've been able to see all these events as they do unfold. What is your take when we talk about human rights status in Uganda?
Hey, thank you so much, Mr. Tiff. You see, when we start to talk about human rights, it is a shame that some people that are staying in Uganda, living in Uganda, and can be able to find every kind of information, maybe online, maybe watch news on TV and see what kind of violations Ugandans face. And some person will come out there and clearly state that what we are seeing are not called violations of human rights and freedoms, but indeed, the state is trying to use its power maybe to calm down the situation and manage well the society. It gives you a kind of pain. And when people come out to speak about such issues, maybe before somebody has gone through this kind of tortures and this kind of mistreatment, that's when they can know how hard it is to be in the hands of those people that are under the state, call them the security organs and the personnel. I, for one, and so many people have also been through the same. The kind of torture you face, even when they haven't started beating you up, the kind of I should call it kidnapping that starts when the security personnel enter the premises itself, shows how angered they are, maybe because they bring the problems they face in their homes.
And it triggers you on what to expect.
And they want to bring the whole problems onto you, as if you are the one who maybe made some decisions and affect how they have to relate in their homes. When you reach some of the safe houses, I should call them safe houses, they are not safe, however, but that's the name they give them. That's when you can understand the kind of human rights violations that is happening in this country. You can find people that have been in those safe houses, the places where they are kidnapped and thrown, that have been there for over a year or 6 months. Some have been there. You don't even remember when they were taken in, and only they can know is when they receive somebody who has also been kidnapped and thrown into that house, that can be able to tell them what is happening outside the prison and the house where they are kept in. So you look at the people who have been beaten and the wounds are just healing. And instead of giving them treatment themselves, they are just left there to use water, and that's how they can survive. That's when you can understand the pain somebody goes through. And when they take you up to that hill Mbuya, CMI, because I was taken there, I also talk from the experience as somebody who has also been tortured, and the pain you go through can only be felt by you, and some people cannot understand that things happen in Uganda, and we have people who are called themselves bosses, and they are top army men and officers smartly dressed in the uniforms that are bought by the taxpayers' money, driving the cars that we buy from the taxes that we pay, and they are very happy, and nobody is concerned about what is happening. Even when you come out to talk about these things, some want to ridicule you, some want to see you as a joker, until somebody has maybe gone through the hands of those merciless and ruthless armed men. That's when they can know and talk about violations of human rights with passion and with experience.
Mr. Kato, you know, Mr. Kakwenza is a novelist, you are a lawyer. What makes one a candidate of those torture chambers?
I guess everybody is a candidate at whatever point, because you have seen people who have been strong in the armed forces also being culprits of the same. We can talk about the likes of Kanovesi, the likes of General Kihura, how powerful he was, but the time they were arresting him, that's when maybe understood that, oh, these things also happen to us. And you look at some people, they call them private. The Baganda use the word chisati. They have no ranks, and those are so aggressive about you. And some of the questions they were asking were very, very, I think I should call it silly, because they're asking you, you are Mnyankore, why are you against your government? And you ask, in which way am I working against this government? And indeed, if there is something that is not going on well, why shouldn't I come out to speak about it? And their intention is...
Is that always the spark of...
Because if you...
Like trying to speak about...
If you look at all the issues and the questions they were asking us, me personally, one of them was, why do we have to annoy the president and the first family? Why? And you ask...
What did you do in particular? Maybe it would, to help our viewers understand.
No, what did I do?
It is me asking you, I don't know.
So long. You have known me for so long, and maybe apart from coming up to talk about issues that are not going on well in this country, for example, human rights violations, mismanagement of public funds and offices, what else do I do? And maybe representing people who are facing tortures and maybe whose rights have been violated. Which other thing do I do?
Well, we have Mr. Kakwenza again. I think we need to hear from him. Mr. Kakwenza, let's start from the point that the Office of the UN Human Rights Commission will not be in Uganda anymore starting August of this year. What is your take on this? That in a country where violations of human rights seem to be very rampant and increasing almost on every day, and now that the bodies that could help to capture and maybe condemn, they're now being silenced. What's your take on that?
Mr. Abdulatif, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you so much. I don't know what is wrong with your network. Mine is very okay. I have been seated here properly waiting for you. I don't know what is wrong with your connection. This cannot connect with mine properly.
Apologies
So,
for that.
no problem. I do not know why you Ugandans are so hyped about this UN something commission, of not being renewed. As in, it has been there and we have always been beaten. I don't see anything that is going to change that they are not going to, when they pack up and go, I don't see anything that we shall miss about it. We have always been beaten in their presence. Even I remember there are some journalists who went to demonstrate at their gate and they were tear gassed at their gate. As in, apart from president, and he is planning to contest again in 2026. So, what purpose has it been serving? All I know is that the NRM regime has a very strong propaganda machine here in Europe and in USA and in the UK, and it is properly bankrolled, oiled. So, and I understand that they use it here in Geneva, where the UN headquarters are. Definitely, the bankrolled Europeans who are really working with a dictator are very good at sanitizing. That is the reason you see the kind of Miriam Black they are here on full paycheck of dictator Museveni just to do his work of sanitizing his atrocities. So practically, I can despair them, but maybe theoretically they have been doing some background work. But again, that background work, it has not been visible. They were here during walk to work. They were here in 2026 elections. They were here in 2021 elections. Museveni is still coming in 2026. So I don't see, apart from the statements of we are concerned and whatnot, I don't see any impact. For me, the impact I want to see is people who are causing all this trauma to us. I want to see them packing. I want them to cause the sanctions,
Mr.
because.
There. Can you hear me?
Sorry?
Before we get to that point of the tormentors being handled, we've had periodical reviews, and these organizations like the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, the Human Rights Watch, they've all been coming up with reports of after carrying out documentations of these abuses. And in the 3 periodical reviews where Uganda has been put on the spotlight, their recommendations have been very clear that Uganda still lies very low when it comes to respect and protection of human rights. So why do you really, much as they may not have been, they have not come up directly to propel government on what to do, but at least they've been able to document these cases, and Uganda has performed very, very poorly after these universal periodical reviews. For instance, in 2011, 2016, and then the very recent one, which was carried out, I think, in January of 2022. Well, we still have issues with our connections. I want to bring in Mr. Tumusime. Mr. Kakwenza says that the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, much as it has been in existence, nothing much has been done. But I strongly believe that they have been able to document some of these cases, and we do not expect those international bodies to come and maybe drag government to court and do what. The best they can do is basically to document these cases and maybe try to come up with a recommendation, something they have been able to do.
But you see, if you think that they are only law and the only impact they can do is only to document and make reports, then you are missing the whole point of why they should be here. Because if what they can do is record, document, and publish the reports, then they can do it even when they are not in the country, because these things are not hidden anymore. You see, by the help of internet and technology, even when you are not in Uganda, you can be able to follow up how events are unfolding each and every day in this country. So if that is their only role, and of course, there is nothing much you can expect from them apart from making all these reports, making recommendations, which recommendation they don't go ahead to follow up, maybe to maneuver through the system and have them put in place, then we are wasting our time.
No, but we have the periodical reviews which are done after every 5 years.
Yes,
man, you're performing poorly, it is time you up.
I am not saying they have not made them. Including our Uganda Human Rights Commission itself. It has made a number of reports. The members of parliament have made reports. What happens after the reports?
But that is
should be the key. Should be the key point. Do they go ahead and follow up? If they documented the number of violations on human rights and freedoms in a particular year or in a period of 5 years, and they have made recommendations, they know people who have been involved in violating the rights, what else have they done? So to say, even when they pack and leave the country, they can still follow up and do their documentation.
And as a country, you suggest we may not feel the absence.
We shall not feel it so much because they can do the documentation even when they are not in this country. The problem where we could have missed them is look at the point where after making all these reports, recommendations, they follow up and maybe put the government to task, so that these recommendations they have made are implemented. We could have missed a lot of opportunities from them. But in this point, it is a matter of making reports and making documentations to say that Abdallah Thief was abducted, kidnapped by so-and-so, and they know these people. These are security officers and operatives. This is the state machinery that are involved in violating the rights. But their only role is to document, and they keep the documents. So that's something that can be done even when they are not in the country.
But we've had sanctions being imposed on very many government officials. Don't you think these are some of the
But when sanctions have been imposed, what has changed? Has the violations changed? That's the question we should also ask ourselves. You see, some things are put on paper and they are not followed to be implemented in most cases. To say that there is what they normally say, that somebody who doesn't feed you cannot make changes in your own house. Because at the end of it all, you'll be the one to tell him, oh, if you want to stay here, do A, B, C, D. It is like at the end of it all, they are following what the government even requires and is interested in. And when we still have such kind of organizations, such a kind of people and groups, and their only role is to document and bring the papers, publish. They will always call people for meetings, and they will serve them tea as they launch the report. And we ask ourselves, when shall we leave the issue of writing down these?
Mr. Kato, what else would you have expected from such bodies?
But to say, Uganda being a signatory of so many international conventions on human rights. I feel the existence of this office would have been a key figure in implementing and maybe tasking all these government officials to fulfill what was signed in the different conventions that regulate human rights in this country, and following the constitution itself, because it has a whole clear chapter, chapter 4, that talks about human rights and freedoms and how they should be implemented in this country. Something that the government ignores and nobody is even questioning them. The people that would have helped us, the people who are in the judicial service and their judges out there who would be maybe trying to enforce these and maybe bring to book the perpetrators of these violations, are also sleeping. I think they don't feel the pain us Ugandans are facing.
Well, thank you so much. Let me go to Mr. Kakwenza. Like you, both of you seem to agree that the office of the UN Human Rights Commission has done nothing much when it comes to human rights abuses and all that in this country. But again, in the same regard, the government of Uganda says it has built enough capacity for its organs to monitor and handle these human rights complaints within the country. Do you agree with that narrative?
Mr. Abdarat, if I have missed, I think, like 70% of your question. I only heard the introductory part of it and the conclusion. I didn't hear anything else.
Well, the question was, you both seem to agree that the office of the UN Human Rights offices is equally useless. And the government says one of the reasons they want them to park and leave is that they have built their internal capacity to monitor and handle human rights cases within the country. Do you agree with that?
That is a very stupid reasoning, because you cannot conclude that the Ugandan government has managed to build its capacity to handle human rights issues when we are still dealing with the same issues that the United Nations, the UN CEO something its purpose was to serve. So you cannot start saying that the capacity is okay now when nothing is completely being done to make sure that the rights of Ugandans are respected and pursuant to the law, domestic law, that is the Ugandan constitution and other statutes, and also the regional, continental, and definitely international statutes. Everything is a mess. So how are they prepared to handle that when I'm just from seeing pictures of someone who has been badly tortured using an iron box? Is that the way of saying that now the capacity is okay, that the UN should leave, pack up and leave? Doesn't make sense.
How best can we handle these issues, the issue of human rights abuses as a country?
Right now, I don't think that we have any capacity to handle human rights issues when Museveni is still the president. And you know that. The person who has been abusing the rights of Ugandans since I cannot say since 1986, since 1980 or even before, up to now, is still. You cannot say that there is something that he has not done and he's going to do it. There's nothing he's going to do. The answer is just to come up and we tell him enough is enough, he should go. We get another credible government of educated people who respect authority, who respect the law. You cannot have a president who does not respect the law. He abuses you, he tortures us, he murders us, year in, year out, and you still give him a chance and you think he will do better. That is not reasoning, honestly speaking. If you look at the ingredients of human rights in a legal perspective, in a moral perspective, and you still want to give Museveni a chance to improve himself, and you've seen what he has been doing since he became president, that is what we call reasoning with the bottom, not with the head.
Well, Mr. Kakwenza, there is one issue. Just like you've said, since 1980s and maybe years back, Museveni has been the president of this country, and many efforts have been put up to maybe cause a change in government, which seem to have failed. And as a country, I don't think Ugandans should just sit and fold their hands and wait for the time maybe God will choose to call him off. And there could be some short-term interventions maybe if Ugandans can take to ensure that there is some sort of order, there is some sort of sanity, there is some respect for human rights in this country. Don't you think it's time we have that short-term intervention in that regard? Because we do not know when Mr. Museveni is going.
You know, Ugandans were on our own. You cannot even bank on the Western governments, those who are democratic. The governments that are telling you that they are democratic, they respect human rights, they respect democracy. Those are that is the actually it is a common value that is supposed to be guiding the relationship between them and the Kampala government. But it has not been respected. For example, the USA government, they preach, actually, human rights is one of their strong foreign policies. But how do they start hobnobbing with a despot who is murdering and killing and torturing people on the extenuation of the geopolitical expedience, their interests? So we are on our own. If you see that the USA government, they are continuing to fund Mr. Museveni, putting money in the budget, giving him military support, just because of their interest in the Great Lakes region, and they term it as the geopolitical expediency, and you think that they will help us to impose strong sanctions against the despot. If you look at the international trade agreements, they actually have human rights clauses within them, a breach of which the trade cannot go on, but the trade goes on. The trade goes on between Uganda and these countries that we call democratic. It goes on, but it should not be going on because of the human rights clauses within the trade
Partner
agreements.
states.
Yes, but they still support him despite him being a terrorist. They support him. So, as Ugandans, we should not be cowards. We should rise up. We go on the streets. We demand change. So before we do that, the dictator is still killing us, he's still torturing us at the watch of those guys who pretend to care about humanity, about human rights. If they cared about the human rights situation in Uganda, they would have imposed very strong sanctions against Museveni. They would not even be inviting to sit with him, to dine with him. You saw recently, they sit with him, they dine with him because they use him as a stooge to fight their battles, as a mercenary. Our brothers and sisters are being murdered in the Horn of Africa, in Somalia, just because of Museveni's greed, because he wants to appease his masters in USA. So if they cared about human rights, as they say, they would not be giving Despot Museveni a single penny. They would not be supporting the budget. And remember, our revenue collection is very small, but our expenditure is almost 3 times than the money URA collects. So our budget depends on the foreign donation, on loans. So if they said, no, we are not going to give you loans, we are not going to give you any donation, make things right, he would do that because, you know, uses such donation as wings. It is what gives him courage. So
Well,
if
Mr.
Ugandans say,
Kakwenza,
if the Western government said no, and also the Ugandans said no, Museveni would within just 1 or 2 weeks, he would go.
well, thank you so much, Mr. Kakwenza. Now, let's talk about the capacity of Ugandans to. Yes, let's talk about the capacity of Ugandans to fight on and maybe raise their voices higher. And we've seen many civil society organizations operating, trying to, speak for the local community, for an ordinary Ugandan in this regard. Now, you've talked about the treaties that have been signed, and they seem to be very, very much silent on these issues. Like you've said, you would expect very strong sanctions against Uganda and maybe some leaders because they have not been able to respect human rights. But we also have many civil society organizations that have come up to, to air out these concerns. Do you think these civil societies can have any input or any impact?
I didn't hear that. Your network got off.
Oh, sorry. I asked that we have many civil society organizations here that have tried to put up a fight and raise voices of Ugandans. And then even the local community, do you think Ugandans as citizens, do you think they have the capacity to speak up on this and maybe put up a fight and like, no, this is too much, enough is enough?
Ugandans, Mr. Museveni, what he understands is instilling fear in Ugandans. You've seen when 3, 4, 5 people, 10 gather, and he brings all the cruelty and, unleashes it against the peaceful citizens. So others, they fear that maybe if we gather up to remove the dictator, they would also be murdered. But I can authoritatively tell you, and this is the truth, if the army and the police, they do not have a capacity to control 50,000 or even 20,000 people on the streets of Kampala, 5,000 people on streets of Mbarara and Mbale and Iganga and other major towns in like Gulu. They do not have that capacity. So the reason why they come up very quickly to, brutalize any person who comes up to say something on the street is because they are trying to prevent what they cannot control. So they cannot, not even 10,000, they cannot control 10,000 people on Kampala streets when they say we are going to move to demonstrate. They cannot.
Well, thank you so much. I need to bring in Councillor Kato here. You've heard Mr. Kakwenza. He agrees that Ugandans are not well capacitated to say no to those atrocities. And then we have national bodies like Human Rights Commission. You've already disputed their contribution in this. And we have also civil society organizations. Now, I want to pose the same question. Do you think there is a temporary remedy to this? Because we do not know when Mr. Museveni's government will be normal.
Yeah, that's so true. We are not sure of when this regime is changing. That's a fact. But to say we have not lost it all, at the end of it all, what we need as citizens is to be courageous enough. In our own capacities, each individual in their own capacities, to come up and do what they can do. If you are a writer, come and write about these atrocities, come and write about these violations, and at least we may have a very big and combined voice about the same that is happening in this country. And to say that the remedy in the temporary that is available for us as Ugandans is to come up in big numbers and do what we call civil obedience.
Is that possible? because we've seen many people preaching for civil obedience. We've had Dr. Chiza Besigye, we've had there is a Kunga campaign somewhere. A lot of these things have been put up. But do you think if they say Kunga, how many people can join the Kunga campaign? If we say let's go for civil disobedience, how do you call it? Defiance. How many people can do that?
But
you know?
But you see, some of these things will not result and happen in one day. That's by a fact. And when we keep on doing some things, I hope at one point they will yield and we shall have fruits out of them. But to say, in doing this civil disobedience, what Ugandans should do and what they need to understand is that when we start shining out these government functions, that's number one, shun about all these leaders that are involved in the mismanagement of this country, and we call upon these churches and religious places and leaders to also get involved in this fight, because this is not our only fight as Ugandans, the ordinary Ugandans as they call us, but this is a fight for every Ugandan who loves this country and who feels that the country is being mismanaged. When priests and church leaders or religious leaders get any kind of opportunity, call it at any function, they have seen them being called to pray for the national functions. Let them utilize such kind of opportunities and call upon Ugandans, so that everybody can do what they have to do in their power. You see, at one point when somebody wants to understand that they really have a power, it is when that is the only option available for them. And that's where Ugandans are heading up to now. And when you look at the hardships we are going in as a country, and you have seen the reactions of different people, their reasoning itself, it is starting to change slowly by slowly. And I believe at the end of it all we shall yield and have fruits. Because it starts with one person and goes to another and another. That's how we shall join the chain, and we shall have things change in this country, and they will be done according to how we wish them to be done and following the rules that are set out in our different statutes and the constitution itself.
Mr. Kato, do you think all Ugandans have the same lens like yours and Kakwenza's?
I will not say all Ugandans.
We could talk about these tortures and, you know, and it's a reality, you know. But the question is, do all Ugandans agree that torture is there?
No.
Much as we have Kakwenza is evident on this, many people saw, but Ugandans tend to move on so quickly, you know, and that's why those things you've been talking about, the defiance, the Kunga things, they've failed. If something happens today, the other day, and then the Ugandans will move on and, you know, go for something else.
If I will not say that all Ugandans reason and believe in what most of us believe in. Because we have regime apologists. We have people who are finding what to feed their families on from the regime. And
through
so
propaganda.
Many people are being compromised to that extent because they don't want to lose what they are taking home from the government. And they will not come out to talk about atrocities that even themselves are witnessing. Some of them are the people that are getting involved in these kidnaps that you see every day, the tortures, because they are Ugandans. They are not imported from Kenya or wherever to come and torture Ugandans here. But these are our brothers, these are our fathers, these are our relatives that are getting involved. But because sometimes they want to associate themselves with the regime so that they can get what may be to put in their pockets and go home with a kavera at the end of the day. Most of them, that's how they are getting involved in also mismanaging the country. Some of you, the Ugandans, are participating and helping the regime to also continue violating the human rights and doing all this kind of messes with whatever we are going through as a country.
Well, before I bring in Mr. Kakwenza, I want to thank our viewers watching us from wherever you are. Patrick Musinguzi, MP Bugahia. He said the regime has decided to disorganize the internet. And indeed, we are experiencing the worst internet today. I don't know, it may be because of Mr. Kakwenza, I don't know. Then Oite Odongo says, if Museveni was abusing rights of Ugandans since 1980s, then even Besigye and Muntu are both accomplices. I think he meant accomplices in the abuse. And then Brooke Williams Chikomeko, thank you for watching. He says, we are all candidates of torture chambers. Chitalia, Luzira, etc. Ariampa Brighton says, you become a candidate of torture when you speak about the truth and social injustices. When you start to identify governance challenges we face as a country. And then Patrick Musinguzi, exactly, the UN human rights has been there but just dormant and useless. Then this one says, we no longer want reports, but rather slap sanctions. Tuned in. Well, thank you. Let the comments keep flowing. And now I want to bring in again Mr. Kakwenza. Many attempts have been made by different politicians. We've seen Dr. Chiza Besije coming up with very many, interventions, and we have seen he himself as a vanguard of this. We've seen him on the front line. Remember, there was the campaign on bringing down the prices, commodity prices. He was arrested multiple times through the red card campaigns. We had, there is another group that came up with Kunga. But it's like Ugandans are not grasping. Ugandans seem not to understand what exactly is happening and what their role should be in the fight to end all this. What can we do as a country to bring everyone on board to see what you and Mr. Kato and a few individuals are able to see?
Ugandans, you need to feel your pain, and when you feel your pain, you need to act about it. Don't just feel your pain and be there and you say, Kasta Besige is there fighting for me, Bobby Wine is there fighting for me, or my MP is there fighting for me. Actually, one of the reasons why Ugandans do not have that gumption to rise up is because they have been subjected to patronage. Even our MPs are contributing to that. Our MPs have completely failed in their duties. Instead of legislating, they have decided to, do other stuff like buying Porsche for the constituents, buying an ambulance. That is not a role of an MP. So it seems that when the poor constituents receive Porsche or receive an ambulance, receive condolences from these MPs, they forget that they are oppressed. That is a very terrible stage we are at right now. So Ugandans, we must feel pain from the heart. You feel pain and you act about it. Just don't sit there and say, Best J is fighting for me, or that is being a coward, and that is a reason why the revolution is not taking a step. Don't think that it is not taking a step because we are all divided. Okay, we are all divided, but we are all against the despot. So, to a revolution to take a step, Ugandans must just wake up. They know their issues. They know the issues that are affecting them, but they are not taking it serious, or just because of cowardice, or maybe they are comfortable with the arms that they receive from their MPs. But they forget about the future. Such arms are not sustainable. So we need to educate the masses, and we tell them, if we do this, we rise up and we send the dictator packing, we shall get a credible government that will bring development. But the things of getting comfortable in poverty, it's really embarrassing.
That could be a political tool that is, instigated by the state to instill fear amongst Ugandans. When Kakwenza gets tortured, when Stella Nyanzi is arrested, when you see those people Ugandans look at, when they are subjected to that kind of situation, it instills fear in them, and it's a tool working out for the state, for the government, actually.
And actually, the churches have taken advantage of that. That is why you see we have 24-hour churches running prayers. People, oppressed people are there in the churches. I call them colonial shrines. Praying all the time. Praying against poverty, praying against this, praying against this. But religion is loved by despots because it keeps the masses very busy. They cannot, the masses cannot remember to come up and fight against the despot. They are always busy, making noise in such colonial shrines. Every 100 meters or every 1 kilometer, you find a church, you find, people busy in churches instead of pouring out their problems, instead of uh, going out and say enough is enough, and they remove the dictate and things are okay. You find people being packed like flies in Bivulu, Yeah, such kind of nonsense. People you find in those Bivulu, you can never call them to demonstrate and they show up, but they are just there.
Mr. Katu, I want you to pick it up from there. Is there any hope of bringing Ugandans closer to understanding this?
Yeah.
That the duty lies in their hands to put this country where it should be?
Yeah, we still have an opportunity and a chance. And what we need to do as Ugandans, the concerned ones at the time, is to keep on sending the same messages.
To who?
To the rest of the Ugandans that are not feeling the pain that some of us maybe have been able to see. Some of them are just in their homes very comfortable as long as they have something to have for supper and breakfast. And maybe they can afford paying a small house where they can stay with their families. That keeps them comfortable. And they have had this syndrome of being contented with at least something small they have in their houses. And maybe if they can afford buying a smartphone, and there are these funny social media platforms that have been introduced each and every day. And you find somebody very comfortable following up what is happening of people who stripped naked. And that's the kind of the population we are staying with. And our role is to keep on sending the message of how and what needs to be done in this country, so that these people can understand that today it's me suffering, but tomorrow it will be them or somebody they know. Until they get that kind of message received and maybe conceptualized in their heads, then we shall have maybe nothing to do. But we shall not get tired of keeping and telling them what we need to do as a country and how the country is being mismanaged and how the leadership is involved. And to say that at the end of it, or when this country and its leadership settles and it is brought to order, everybody will be contented in how this government and the country will be governed, and everybody will get and have something that they will also feel happy about in the country, not picking up the peanuts from the regime. And some of them have even been turned into paupers because they have not understood their power as the people, and they want to always rely on the regime, and they feel that's what they can do. But joining our voices with the rest of the people that are trying to awaken and make these Ugandans understand the kind of pain we go through as a country. In this period where parents are taking their kids back to school, and a person cannot even afford to pay for one child at the school, not until they understand that all this is caused by the mismanagement of this country. Then we shall also say our message until we feel also tired, and we shall also leave everybody to be on their own, because we have at least tried to educate them and tell them, look, this is how it should, issues of governance, issues of advocacy should be treated in the country. And nobody maybe is trying to listen to us. But we shall keep on doing what we have to do as the people, and leave the rest maybe to those who are concerned. Everybody that will feel the pinch of the pain, they will come and join the struggle, and we shall have things change in this country.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Kato. And of course, I want to thank our viewers who are tuned in from wherever you are across the world. When the issue under discussion is basically looking at the status of human rights in Uganda. We are living in a country where, when you talk about, human rights, these are rights that are entitled to any human being, and such they stretch to communication. As we speak right now, Facebook has been it's turned off for a while, and it's one way, many Ugandans could communicate to one another, like, no, this is what's happening today. We have community reporters. You hear something is happening in Masaka, someone has been arrested in Masaka, someone is being manhandled, and someone will flash that, onto Facebook, and the whole world will be able to know. Now, as we speak, Facebook was deliberately turned off, and that's a typical violation of human rights. We've seen journalists' rights. One time the alternative Digitalk here were raided. Many of our colleagues, including actually Mr. Katu here, they were detained and kept incommunicado for close to a week until there was a lot of noise that propelled them to produce you guys before, courts of law. And there's so many of these things happening. We've seen many people being kidnapped, others dying off there, when no one actually other people were kidnapped and no one can trace them. And this leaves a big question to what do we need to do as a country? What do we need to make each and every Ugandan know that there is a crisis and each and everyone has a stake in putting these things in order? Well, as we speak, I want to go back to Mr. Kakwenza again. There is one controversial debate here. That's the debate on homosexuality. Other people call it a human right. Other people call it a bare right. You're the lawyer, you can help us. Other people call it a bare right. If it's a bare right, it's assuming I have a right to access in this place. But not everyone has access to, so that's a right which is given to specific individuals and given to a different time, location, and of course time. And then a human right, it's entitled to each and every human being. Now, the issue of homosexuality has become a very big issue right now as we speak. Many people call it a human right, and if we are to discuss human rights issues and violations in this country, it is something we should put on table. And just recently, I was reading an article and I saw a response from your lawyer, Counsel Aaron Chiza. I know you may not be in position to speak for him, but I can share, and I believe you also read it. And it's like, if two adults actually, they have a right to agree on what kind of sex orientation they prefer. And that was his opinion. Now, I want to pose this question to you. Is this something we should give attention as a country to discuss whether we need it or we don't need it in Uganda?
You see, Mr. Abdulatif, our responsibility as parents is to protect our children. And children, I'm talking about these ones who are not yet 18 years, who are below 18 years. So our responsibility as parents is to guide our children in the way we would want them to be in future when they are adults, when they are above 18 years. So also the responsibility of the law is to protect these children from all forms of sexual violence, whether heterosexual, whether homosexual. That is the responsibility of the law. But when a person clocks 18, you have limited influence in their lives or what they choose to be. So for me, I would really not mind myself, to intervene in someone's private issues, whom they choose to sleep with or what they choose to use their organs, dicks and vaginas. I would not really want to know. That is their privacy. The issue is involving children. Those ones who are below 18 years, it is ridiculous, whether it is homosexual violence, whether it is heterosexual violence, that is, it is unacceptable. So our constitution, Article 36, it protects, it provides for the protection of the minority groups. And I do not think that in any of the minority groups we have the children. The minority groups of the homosexual type, they are adults. So it is their right to do what they want to do in their privacy, but it is not their right, or I have not seen them recruit children or whatever. So our role as parents, as I've said before, is to
That's Kakwenza's view on that. As long as one clocks 18, you're free to do what deems right on your side. When two people are closed in a room, you may not have much knowledge on what takes place in the room. His only concern is when you bring what is supposed to be within your bedroom and preach it to the rest of the community, especially the children. But again, we've seen some materials that have been distributed in some schools. There is a time, I think, I may not mention the school, but there is a time, I think there are 2 schools, 2 or even more, that I know. And such materials were distributed to children, maybe to lure their minds into that line of thinking. And I think this is now where the biggest concern comes from. And so how do we come up to enforce that, wait, if this is what you choose to do, don't lure other people to join you and be part of that. And that's what we are actually seeing today. You see that many political organizations seem to be sponsored. Actually, it's in quotes. They're being sponsored by, it is said, they're being sponsored by homosexual activists, movements and whatever. We've seen many schools that have been supported. There are many schools here that have been trying to recruit children as in the name of bursaries and all that, And so how do we deal with this? I'm still with you, Mr. Kakwenza.
As I said before, I really condemn such kind of sexual violence on minors. But if someone is above 18, then they definitely know what they are doing with their privacy. But to involve minors, I do not agree with that. I really do not agree. And I think the problem comes from when they are teaching sex education in our schools. And then we have different types of sex, heterosexual and homosexual. And I think that chapter comes in. That I do not agree with it. I do not agree that our children should be recruited in that line of thinking or that line of acts. And also, I do not agree that the adults who are homosexuals should be discriminated against. I don't agree that they should be chased away from our hospitals, should be stigmatized. No, I do not only agree with recruiting our children in such acts. And I have told you that the responsibility is with us, the parents. Our role as parents is to imbue the values, the values which we subscribe to. If you subscribe to such kind of values, teach them to your child before they are adults. But after they are adults, you have little influence, or you cannot influence your values very late on someone who is above 18 or who is already 18. So parents, we need to step up and we teach our children what we believe in, what we think is right.
I want to come to you, Councillor Kato. What's your take on this whole subject of homosexuality?
Like to say,
I know you're going to speak as a lawyer.
Yes, I will speak as me, Kato, and then I will speak as a lawyer.
Okay,
first speak as Kato. I don't like such kind of sexual acts. I don't like it on a personal level. But to say, I don't stop adults who have sound mind, who are understanding, they know what they're doing to do what they want to do with their bodies. At the end of it all, as long as they don't involve me in their acts, then I have no issues with them. But like Kakwenza said, I very well agree with him that the only problem comes in when they want to bring this such kind of acts of homosexuality and lesbianism and the rest, taking them now to schools to teach them to the young people. That's the next generation that we shall face and have as a country. But when the two adults come and they decide that they are going to use their bodies in this way, I have no problem with them. And we should leave them to do what they want to do at the end of it all. To say that even when the country tries to set up so many laws, maybe trying to condemn, maybe trying to stop such kind of sexual acts, at the end of it all, it will come to the individuals who are involved in practicing them to either stop the habit or even continue. Because when two people go into a room, nobody wants to know what they are going to do. There. Yes. And like to say, even when these individuals decide to use their bodies in such a way, we should let them. Maybe that's what they enjoy. Maybe that's what they like. It is a personal choice as long as they are adults and they are not forced into doing such kind of sexual acts. Then we let them do what they do. And to say we should not discriminate them because they have taken choices. Like we have so many people who take choices and they want to say, get involved in polygamous marriages. So should we also stop them from doing the same? Where a person wakes up in the morning and decides to take and get involved in such acts, we should let them enjoy their freedoms as long as they are not forced into such kind of acts. And we should not discriminate them for that. They should access services like the rest of the people access them. If they fall sick, then let them run to the hospitals for medical treatment and care. But when we don't condemn and maybe try to educate and sensitize the people that where you choose as an adult to get involved and practicing a certain sexual act, then do it as an individual. Don't lure into our young generation, the young people, the children in schools, and actually taking it to schools. That should be abolished and completely fought against. But when you are two adults and you decide to use your bodies as the way you want to do, then go and have what you have. At the end of it all, everybody knows what they gain in what they are doing. And maybe that's where their pressure is.
Well, this has come up because education has proved to be so expensive in this country. Yeah. Much as we have the UPE, the USE, is it the UPET, whatever you name it. but it's really expensive.
Yes,
and so many children, many parents have given in their children in the name of bursaries and, you know, bursaries, we have a bursary for your child, we have a bursary here. And when they get there, these parents, they call it a relief. But they have no idea of what is really taking place after those children being taken.
But you know it's so that he who pays the piper determines which tune must be played at the end of it all. And some of these parents have been too lazy, very lazy, not to even find a background check of a school where they want to take their kids to. And they are not even inquiring beyond what they see of, we are recruiting people, we are giving them full bursaries, and you don't find about the intentions of these people. So when you give freely your child to somebody, some organization, some person who has ill intentions and maybe intentions of involving these people into such acts of homosexuality and the rest, then you should not blame us for saying that these people are involved in same-sex acts should be should not be abandoned and left to die because they decided to choose and opt for that option. So the burden goes beyond the leaders themselves to the families where these children come from, where these adults come from. So to say that you need to find and make a background check on the schools you want your kids to go to study to, and maybe if you are in need of help, also consult beyond what is being said by the person who is interested in giving you a bursary, and know at the end of it all what are they intended What are their intentions at the end of it all? Is it a bursary because they want to lure your child into doing homosexuality and such kind of related acts? Then if you also believe in it, go ahead and surrender. And to say the parents themselves should, I think, not shy away to talk about such kind of acts with their children before they even send them to school.
Well,
be open to them and tell them at the end of it all the bad things that are involved when you join yourself with homosexuality groups and the good things.
Well, I want to pose a similar question to Kakwenza as well. Could it be poverty, that propels these parents to give in their children, all in the name of, bursaries and all that? Because the reality is, many schools have recruited children and they have introduced this whole discussion on homosexuality. So should we attribute this to the poverty levels in this country?
You see, Mr. Abdelatif, we have failed as parents. In Uganda, we have really failed as parents. For me, let me give myself an example. I grew up in a very restrictive family. My father and my mother, my mother was so restrictive. No woman would even cross home looking for me. She would be beaten. She would be chased away. My mother was so restrictive to the extent that I even joined the university when I had never seen a naked woman. I remember losing my virginity in my second year at the university. I had never seen a naked woman. So our children these days, they start having sex at 12 years. They start watching porn at 12 years. At 10 years, they're already watching porn. And definitely, what do you think will come up after that? They will want to practice. So as parents, we need really to step up the game and we take control of the direction of our children, since the law has failed, since the politics has failed, the leadership has failed. We need to step up and we take control of our families. So my actually credit to my dad and my mother for me in such a line, for preserving me to the extent that I even reached the second year of the university when I had never seen a naked woman. I really thank my mother for that. If she was not there to protect me, however harsh it was, maybe I would have had sex at 12 or 13 or 14. But at 22 years, I had never seen a naked woman. I had never even watched porn. I grew up in poverty. So if you blame poverty for such things, when me, a product of poverty, I am not gay or I was not introduced to sex before 22 years, I do not really understand you. But anyway, that is not to say that there is no poverty in Uganda or that people are not taking advantage of poverty to introduce our children to flimsy stuff. But parents, we need to step up and we direct our children, and we, too much freedom for our children. Those who are below 18, it is very bad, very dangerous. I'm giving an example here in Germany. You find, children have phones, they are allowed.
Well, we've lost you again. And Kakwenza says, regardless of the poverty levels, I think parents need to up the game, when it comes to their responsibilities. Yeah, you are telling us something that in Germany, children have access to phones and please go ahead.
For me, I am so impressed when I move in trains and I find children, they are from school, but they have books they are reading. At the same time, they have phones. But when you find a Ugandan, they do not have time for books. They're always on phones. Even children, they even have phones in secret. You go to the park, you find people reading books, children reading books. You go to the library and you find very many, under 18 children. They are busy reading books. When they, monkey see, monkey do. When they see you parents are always on phone, definitely they will also do that. So you find in a train a mother or a father, they are reading a book and the child is also reading a book. So we need we need to take control of the direction of our children. If we cannot do that, our children are going, they are swaying, they are veering off the African values, unless we like it that way, you know.
Have the elites of your kind, done enough to change the status quo in that regard?
For me, I will speak as me, as myself. For me, I tell my children what I like, what I would want them to be in the future, so I prepare them. So I would rather prepare them now than punishing them or regretting in future when they do something that is very stupid. I wouldn't want to be like Mr. Museven, who is moving around scooping the poo of his 48-year-old son. So I would rather teach my child the values that I want her to or him to embrace than right now when it is still possible, than when it is very difficult to achieve. That is after 18 years. So I would not want to be a 70-year-old man, Kakwenza of 70-year-old, who is carrying a spade, scooping and apologizing on behalf of my daughter or my son. No, I would not do that. So I'm trying by all means to prepare my children to teach them what I would want them to be in the future. I would not want to, be there and I apologize on behalf of my child because they have done something very stupid, No.
At an embarrassing age.
Definitely.
Well, I want to thank Chiberu Shidi. You're watching us. Chiberu is like colonial shrines. It has amused him. Then Richard Narese is like, thank you for the show. And I think there is one, this would need your response, Kakwenza. Anyway, the perennial, consistent and persistent question is, have human rights been integral to the NRM regime? Do they matter and will they ever matter? That is one. Two, Oite Odongo says, even Kakwenza should learn to be civil in his quest for change. Democracy flourish with responsibility. You seem to be responsible, according to Oite Odongo.
Whom should I respond first? I did not. The NRM regime.
Afuna Adula says the perennial, consistent and persistent question is, have human rights been integral to the NRM regime? I think that is not for you. I don't know.
7 years that the NRM has been in power, definitely. To expect something new from them is to fool yourself. You cannot really expect anything new from them that is in respect of human rights or democracy. I said that you have to look at the human rights. You have to definitely look at it in the perspective of the law, of its ingredients. For example, right to privacy, right of privacy of all Ugandans, home property. Is it there? No. Two, fair hearing. Is it there? No. Respect for human dignity. Is it there? No. Protection from deprivation of property. Is it there? So personal liberty, right to life, freedom from discrimination, civil and political rights. All the chapter 4 of Ugandan constitution. It has been really not taken serious by this regime. It seems they have their set of laws that they are following. And to respond to was it a joke? He's called who?
It's called Oite Odong.
To respond to him, Odong, for me, It is not illegal to remind a person or to tell a person that he is a dictator. It is my voice and I respect it and I cannot regret. It is not illegal, or in literature, when you are describing someone pure, you describe them purely. If someone is plump, you cannot start saying that they have six packs. You describe them that they have a pot belly. You describe their stomach. If someone is greedy, tell them. If they are stupid, tell them that they are stupid. If they are useless, tell them that they are useless. The reason why maybe if everyone told them that they are useless, they would wake up, they would start using their senses. But if you are ashamed of speaking out what you're thinking, then you are a coward. You are an embarrassment in making things better. Actually, there is no genius without a touch of madness. And a touch of madness, I do not say it is madness, it is a creative way of saying out things. If a pig is thinking and you tell them that, look, you're stinking, and then the pig starts saying that you are not being civil in your communication, which kind of reasoning is that? You know? For me, I will always speak out what I am thinking without fear, and I cannot fear because I pay taxes. I would tell you about the social contract in law, but I don't think that you would understand. I pay taxes in Uganda. It is an agreement between me and government, so that the government protects me, takes care of me. That is the agreement I have with the government of Uganda, in exchange for also giving up some rights. But if the government is very useless and is not protecting me and instead is abusing me and killing me and criminalizing paternalistic laws that are not supposed to be criminal, I have no option but to fight it in the same measure it is fighting me. Though for me, I do not have guns, I have a pen and I have a mouth, and no one has a right to come in my mouth to start telling me what to do. I know my rights pursuant to freedom of expressions and the law, because I also know the limits of freedom of expression. For example, no one has ever seen me glorifying violence, promoting genocide, promoting child pornography. Those are the exceptions of freedom of expression. But me hating Museveni and calling him a pair of buttocks, it is a creative way of telling him that something is wrong. He must do something right about it. Telling the Museveni that he is as greedy as a pig, it doesn't necessarily mean that I have bad manners. It is me, reminding him that things are not fine. He must make them fine. So, pursuant to the social contract I told you about, I have a right to even tell him to pack up and go. That is if he listens. In developed countries, such things can never happen, and the leader keeps power. They have to resign by force. You've seen very, very petty excuses. Leaders in Europe, they resign just because of petty excuses. Then what about the criminality of Museveni? And still he cannot give up power. And he holds it with so much arrogance and ignorance and foolishness, and we still tolerate him just because we have been used to what he has said for himself. He has weakened the institutions. As Barack Obama says, democracy depends on strong and independent institutions. He has all the institutions in his armpit. Parliament cannot even gather the gumption of impeaching him, yet he has done everything that requires him to be impeached. So which kind of person are we dealing with?
Thank you so much. Before we come to the end of the show, could you please take us through, we need to know how is your life in Germany there? How are you living and what are you up to? Maybe you could share
my life in Germany. I cannot say that it is so. I cannot say that my life in Germany is rosy.
To know how is Kakwenza living. How is everything?
Because
generally?
for me, I don't think that I have ever desired to leave Uganda. You know, first of all, when I was arrested the first time, I had wanted to. People had wanted me to leave the country, but I said no. I stayed. The second time they had wanted me to leave, but I said no. I stayed. Then the third time, this time around, it was very terrible. You saw how I came out of prison. And if I had not fled, I don't think that I would have lived up to April. I would have died. I reached here in the hospital in Europe, and the doctors saw me and cried, and I was put on the bed for almost 5 months. I don't know if you.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Kakwenza. And I don't know whether you're still online. I would give you more 30 seconds just to give us your parting shot, and then we get to the show.
Life is not so rosy, so I'm waiting to heal, and then I return. And this time when I return, I don't want to use panya like I used. I don't want to use a witch broom like I used. I am coming through Entebbe airport, and they should wait for me. When I know that I am now very fine and ready to go back to the struggle, I'm coming.
It's written on your shirt, Kakwenza, on your jumper. I've seen Museveni stop. I can't read the rest of what's there.
It is Museveni stop deforestation, sir. You know, I'm an environmentalist also.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Kakwenza. We really thank you for your time to be part of the show, and we really appreciate the insights you've shared with us. We'll be getting back to you within our, subsequent editions of our different shows, and we really appreciate that you've been able to make it. Well, Mr. Kato, I just want to get your parting shot, and then we close the show.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tiff, and the viewers for this show. As we come to the close of the show, I would say that it is the right for every Ugandan to think for themselves and think and do what they feel. It is good, actually, not for themselves alone, but something that will be good for their neighbors. And when I talk about the neighbors, I also mean the people that can be affected by what you do. If it's bad, then it will affect them. If it's good, then they will benefit. So we need to up our game and maybe do what is good. That is how we shall stop all this kind of mistreating each other, and that's how we shall save this country. And to say that the people in leadership and in power should know that this power is for a short time, and at one point in time they will also be in the rulers and they will see how harsh it is. But I pray that even when we change the regime and the leadership in this country, we should be looking at people who have the passion and the love for protecting human rights, for good governance and issues that make their citizens happy and maybe safe in staying in their country. That's what I could say.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Kato. I also want to thank all our viewers for being tuned in from the time we started until now. Richard Narese, you're like, parents have tried their best to guide their children, but the kind of content they watch on TVs is also sometimes, devastating. And well, let's keep the conversation flowing on our social media platforms. We'll be able to respond. Just go there and give in your views, and our team will always be available to respond. I want to thank the team you have worked with, Lillian Princess. Thank you so much. The team in the control room, led by Jeremiah, the PD, and everyone there. We really thank you for putting this together, and we apologize. We've had quite, difficulties with our internet and all that, but sometimes these are expected. We all know the dynamics in our country. Well, this brings us to the end of tonight's edition of the Hotline Show. My name is Abdallah Latif. Until next Monday, I wish you a good night.